Hi, Richard. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. So first of all, could you just give us a little intro of yourself and what Deus Pay is all about?
Yeah, no problem at all. So Richard Crook, I'm really liking these chairs. When we said fireside chat, I didn't really expect
There's no
this.
fire, but we've got the chairs.
You've got the chairs. This is doing well. So Deus Pay, from my perspective, I'm the CEO. Deus Pay provides crypto payment services to the Superyacht industry. We've got a number of brokers, certainly in the room, that I've met today, who are already using us, where you are looking to accept crypto as a payment mechanism for the goods and services, usually for charter, is what we've discovered.
I mean, how prevalent is that? How much is that coming into the industry?
Well, I think we're looking at it as a rapid adoption. When we talk crypto, most people go, "Oh, Bitcoin. I don't have any of that," or maybe you do. But actually, there's a bigger story underneath that, where the technology under Bitcoin has actually allowed us to digitize dollars. You see these and you hear these as stable coins, Tether, Circle, and people are starting to hold these digital dollars. There's now over $200 billion worth of these stable coins out there that someone's given a dollar up, received a token in return, and they're now holding that in their wallet. And right away from Bitcoin, these stable coins, these tethers and these circles are now being used by people for goods and services. Now, when we say, well, it must be small because I've never heard of it, there were more payments made using stable coins than Visa last year. So we are seeing a very rapid adoption of this new technology and this new payment mechanism.
Could you just explain, sort of, for those who are not totally experts, what stablecoin is as opposed to Bitcoin, for example?
No, it's relatively straightforward. I mean, Bitcoin from its perspective is a private currency that was created, and there's lots of stories on that. It goes up and down in price, and everybody keeps hearing about it. But actually, born in the crypto industry, was what we would describe as a digital dollar. This is someone has put a dollar in to a company called Tether, and Tether has issued them a token, a receipt, if you will, for that dollar. But then they can use that token to move it around the world. They can have it on their wallet, and then they can use it for goods and services. And with that in mind, it's growing as a mechanism that we've seen into the Superyacht industry.
So how are these stablecoins revolutionizing those cross-border transactions?
Well, I think the most important thing to take yourself out of is a sort of G7 perspective. If you're in the G7 like I am, getting access to dollars, being able to make payments with dollars or GBP or euros is relatively easy. I can get a bank account, I can send money. Many of us have actually had a payment held up and asked questions, and that happens from time to time. Once you step out of the G7 and you get into the G20, into the global south, it gets a lot harder. There's a lot more times when the friction occurs. You may not be able to get access to dollars, you may not be able to get access to the bank accounts, and you may not be able to send the money. And even if you are able to send the money, you have access to it and you're able to send it, it gets caught up. So you're starting to send money from South America over to South Africa, or from South Africa into Dubai. It will go through a number of banks. And each of those banks will do screening and sanction checks. Your payment is perfectly legitimate, but it will get flagged through some AI transaction monitoring. And you run that roulette every time you do a payment. And what we see with our clients out there, and certainly you see with some of your clients in that global south, outside of the G20, is that using bank payments or making bank payments in a timely fashion is hard work. And that's really what they are recognizing, is the stablecoin payments are faster, they are cheaper, mostly they are safer for the client from the point of view of a customer experience.
How does Deus Pay, then, your company, how do you solve the issues that the efficiencies in the payment systems throw up?
So from our perspective, we can be seen as a sort of digital Amex. We are onboarding brokers, and you start with a broker. A broker is doing a charter, and the client asks to pay in Tether, a stable coin. And the broker turns and goes, yep, absolutely, we use Deus Pay. They send them a payment link. The client then uses that payment link to send their stablecoin, their crypto, their tether. Actually, it comes to us. We then convert it, and we then deliver the USD, the GBP, the fiat to the charter company and onwards to the owner. So from our perspective, we act as an alternative payment rail where the brokers are being asked to accept these digital currencies, these crypto, and actually we're acting as a supplier to provide that.
I mean, what's the take-up? How much of this business are you doing?
So from our perspective, we're seeing a lot in the Superyacht business. Private jet is where we're seeing it a lot. Where we are seeing it primarily is in timely transactions. When you try to make a bank payment over a weekend, that's going to be difficult. It'll only arrive or settle on Monday. When you're making a payment through Deus Pay using one of these digital currencies, the money is delivered instantly. It arrives 24/7. And from our perspective, we then send the money onwards to the broker. And so what we're seeing is a rapid adoption in things where there is a timely link. So charter, both on the private jet side and on the super yacht side, is where we're seeing rapid adoption.
And are people taking payment in stable coin as well, or is it always stable coin gets converted into fiat?
So on our side, we are providing services primarily to the merchants, to the brokers, if you will, who are wanting to accept the tether for the charter. Yes, we do have clients that are trying to come on to crypto. They're trying to get into stablecoin to then use those cryptos those stable coins to make payments to their suppliers. But primarily, we have seen your clients in the Superyacht, the owners, have lifted their wealth out of their local jurisdiction into these stable coins, the tethers, and they are now using it to charter yachts or buy yachts.
So why should Superyacht owners, brokers, charter companies, why should they trust Deus Pay for their payments?
So we're a regulated payments firm. We're regulated here in the EU. In the EU. We've also got regulation out in North America and in the Middle East, which covers us for payments. The majority of our clients wouldn't use us if we weren't regulated. And with that in mind, we find ourselves having to fulfill the rules and the regulations that all financial services firms do. I come from a financial services background. We are required to fulfill and dutifully fulfill all the sanctions, all the transaction screening, all of the rules that are required there, but we only do it once. If you make a payment cross-border and you do that inside the G20, it will go through a number of different financial service firms, and they are all required to do those things. We only do it once, and thus the risk to that payment and the speed of that payment is improved.
Okay. We've got a poll question. There was one before, but this one. Have you ever experienced delays when processing international transactions? This is a poll from yes, too often. So I suppose that answers that sort of to your point that people have experienced the delays, which is where you come in and help out.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is that there's a lot of payments being made throughout the banking and financial system. Those transactions, I'm just looking at the numbers here, the transactions, there's a lot of these transactions, and yes, they get caught up. These are perfectly legitimate transactions, but all too often they get caught up with no understanding of the sensitivity of that payment. Now, the person at the end expecting that payment, there may be legal or commercial reasons why it's really sensitive and really important to get that transaction there. The bank doesn't take any knowledge of it. I think you go one step lower than that. Actually, the rules have been set up so that when you do a payment, if there is any reason or suspicion, even though it's perfectly legitimate, if there's a suspicion, it will be held up. It can be held up indefinitely, and worse, the bank is not allowed to tell you about the transaction or where it is, what's going on. And undoubtedly, that survey tells you exactly that.
Oscar, do we have that other poll that we had up before? It was an interesting... maybe not. Yeah, this one. So this was a poll to the room. Have you used a digital currency for transactions? So no, 60% are saying no, 20% said yes, 20 would be happy to not ask yet. Are you seeing any trends in terms of what you're doing? Is that no number coming down quickly? I mean, what's the kind of the rate of adoption that you're seeing?
That's a really good survey, and I think that's where we're at in the super yacht industry. I think we are seeing it across different verticals, and we're seeing different rates of adoption. If we ran that survey in another industry, another vertical, it may be lower, it may be higher, but what's undoubtedly happening is it's increasing in terms of the people that are already doing it, thinking of doing it, or as the question asked, would be happy to do it, because they're now starting to recognize that there is an alternative way of making payments than the current ways you have been used to.
Are we talking across all payments? I mean, including purchase? We're talking that size as well.
So Deus Pay doesn't try and compete with Visa, not interested in trying to do sort of high volume, low value cups of coffee, much more interested in the smaller volume, high value transactions. That's where we see the sweet spot. People are happy to use Visa. Visa is very successful and very useful. But once you get above that value that you don't want to use a Visa card, it's then into a bank transfer, and that's where the size come up, where everybody's like, oh, please don't make me do that again. And I think what we have done over the last 3 decades is roll out an internet of information. Think about what we've done with email, the web, e-commerce, social media. That's all just information. We're now rolling out an internet of value. We're in the first decade of that. We've got another 2 decades to go. But over the next 2 decades, what you're going to see is the ability to be able to make payments at the speed and convenience of an email, and that's what we're helping with. And from our perspective, the G20 met as a group of countries back in 2020 and said, hey, we want to improve payments. We're now 4 or 5 years later, and yes, we've marginally improved the G7 payment network, but the G20 at large still struggles with payments. And as the growth of those economies, as the wealth increases, the client base across the super yacht industry increases, and so the need and desire to make cross-border payments from countries you've not taken payment from before leads you to Deus Pay, an alternative payment mechanism.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions here. Let's other than payments for sales and charter, where else do you see blockchain technology being used within the industry?
So I think the important thing to recognize is that I've been looking at how to use blockchain as a technology for a number of years. The one piece of it that you should take away is actually payments are never made in isolation. They're made for goods and services. They're 2 legs to an overall transaction. No one sends a payment for no reason. So actually the linking of that payment to the goods and services is really what's important. And I think that's where you will start to see the blockchain technology come from the payment side and start to fulfill and make it easier to connect with the actual transaction you're doing. And escrow, certainly in the corporate jet space, is starting to be a really important one where people want to use that blockchain or smart contracts to actually hold the monies before actually the sale goes through.
Okay. The bottom one there from Mark from BNP Paribas. Good naming on your question, by the way. Everyone else take note. How do the usual KYC screenings occur in a stable pay transaction, and who performs them?
Oh, this is a great question. Thank you. This is a gift. As a question, so the case screening is absolutely the same. Doesn't matter if you're doing a stablecoin payment or whether you're doing a fiat payment. We have to fulfill the same screening, same transaction sanctions, so it's the same rule book. So there's no getting around it, there's no evading it. You have to do it. The 2 differences that occur, one I've already covered, which is we're doing it once, and then we make the payment, as opposed to it jumping through the correspondent banking network, where it will get done over and over again. But the other really fabulous piece of using a stablecoin transaction is that the funds that we have received, we can see all the way the history of those coins. So we can see where they came from, what they've been used for before. And so actually from a sanctions or a screening perspective, we know the source of wealth and we know the source of funds. And the banks don't. When they've taken funds in, they have to ask questions and pieces of paper are passed around. But as soon as that money then moves to the next bank or the next bank, nobody knows. Well, in actual fact, every single one of those coins, stable coins, out on that blockchain, we're tracking them, we can see them. So if they've passed through North Korea or they've been through some sanctioned country, we don't touch them. In fact, we can screen them, we have the tools to screen them, and we send them back. And we refuse those stable coins that are marked.
Okay. Last question. Are funds which you may hold on account insurable?
So again, we're a regulated payments firm. So with that in mind, we hold funds on clients' behalves. When the crypto comes in, it is now the funds of the merchant. So if a broker comes to us and says, hey, we've got a client, they want to make a charter, soon as that client sends those funds to us, we are then holding those funds on behalf of the brokerage that's doing the charter, and those funds are theirs. From our perspective, we're a regulated firm, and those funds are protected. Beautiful.
We will leave it there. Thank you very much, Richard. Great to hear that. That is coffee time, ladies and gents.
Rob, thank you.
See you back here soon. Thanks, Richard.